Hey, don't take the trash out. Take you up, remember tag out. Very nice work. Where is it? Do not lock it on.
So here is my AutoCAD for the BlackJack dealer. Here I have my analog I/O inputs and outputs here. I have a 4-point digital input here with each of my limit switch. This one here is for the left side, so it stops the dealer whenever it goes to the left. Here is the one on the right side of the terminal strip, so it doesn't let it get too far to the right. My LS3 here is for the valve going up, and my LS4 here is so when the valve goes down it knows when to stop. And that is in rack 1, slot 1. Here is another 4-point digital input here in rack 1, slot 2. This is just a switch for on and off. And this is on the controller, and you can hit stand and deal. The hitting is it'll go get a card and drop it off in the player's slot. This stand here just lets the player stand, and hitting the deal button will start the deal sequence and deal out cards. And here is the bust button that would be with these buttons right here on the controller, but the bust button just lets the dealer know that a player has busted. And here's an E-stop that will stop the whole process, and this is all on another 4-point digital input in rack 1, slot 3. This right here is a pressure switch into a 2-point analog input in rack 1, slot 6. This is just measuring the pressure in the PSI, and you can change it depending on how much pressure you want. Another 4-point discrete output here. So this is for all my outputs in rack 1, slot 4. I have different valves. I got valve 1A and valve 1B. The valve 1A is for the vacuum to be on, so it's able to suck up a card. My valve 2 or 1B is the vacuum off, so it can drop the card. Right here I got valve 2A, which will move the dealer to the left, and I got valve 2B, which moves the dealer to the right. I got another 4-point discrete output in rack 1 slot 5. The valve 3A is able to make it go up, and the valve 3B makes the head go down. And then here is just my power circuit for, this is a just regular power light, and this is my switch, my selector switch to turn the process on or off. I got my analog I/O with that, so it turns that off. Then here is the drawing for the whole BlackJack dealer here. We have our different pneumatic valves here, which do the movement or make this move side to side, up, down. I got a 5-way 3-position spring return floating center spool valve going into the dealer head here. And I got a 5-way 3-position spring return closed center spool valve, which goes onto the side here, which will be making the dealer move from left to right. And I got 5-way 3-position spring return closed center spool valve, which will be controlling the vacuum on and off coming from a vacuum generator here. Then incoming air goes into the pressure regulator and it regulates it back here, letting the vacuum know how much PSI it needs to suck up or turn off. So right here I have my program for the BlackJack dealer here. I got a couple different subroutines sitting on the main routine here, and the reason for that is to make the program look a lot more neater and cleaner and just easier to read. Everything's a lot more organized when you do this. So I got a valve subroutine here, scaling subroutine, and a timer and counter subroutine. In the first subroutine over here in the scaling, this SCP block right here is just taking the raw data from the point IO card, from the pressure transmitter, and just scaling it down so that we can use the correct inputs here. So I got an input minimum of 85 and an input max of 3,850, and that is scaling it down to 0 and 57 pressure here. And when it's turned on, it will display that, the pressure and the output right here. So here in the timer and counters, here this is just basically where all my timer and counters are. As you can see here, the valves, this is where all the outputs are, which we don't really have that many. So here is where you begin the dealing sequence, which will hand out 2 cards to everyone, player 1, player 2, and the dealer. So when the deal button is pressed, it will create a latching circuit here, and this will not turn off until it is less than or equal to 5 cards, because that is when everyone will have be dealt 2 cards. And in order to keep track of that, we'll go over to the timers and counters here. Right here, every time the vacuum goes off and it's less than or equal to 5 cards here, it will fire through this one shot and count up the cards dealt by 1 here. In the deal sequence, right here, we'll begin a timer for the dealer to move left for 2,000 milliseconds here, which will be 2 seconds. And once that is done, it will begin the timer for the valve to go down, that right here can be seen right here, and that'll be less than or equal to, so it's able to move down and hand out a card for the dealing sequence. So when that's timing, it will turn on the down valve and lock that on. And right here is where you keep track of the different players being dealt. We got player 1, player 2, and the dealer here. And this is all turning on the valve to go to the right. And that is kept track with these equal blocks here and these timer off delays. So we got player 1 here, player 2, and the dealer. So whenever the card's dealt is equal to 0, 3, 6, or 9, it will activate the player 1. Whenever it's 1, 4, 7, 10, it will turn on the player 2. And whenever cards dealt is equal to 2, 5, 8, or 11, it will turn on the dealer cards here. And when the deal push button is pressed here, it'll start this valve left. And I have some timers here for other different things. To move it to the left here, it'll latch it on. We got our valve down, our valve up here, which is also controlled by some more timers here. And also when the deal push button is pressed, this is to get it in position at the beginning of the deal sequence to move the valve up so it's not down and it doesn't get stuck in the box with all the cards in it. Right here when the deal button is pressed, it resets everything so it's a fresh new game. This is for the vacuum on and vacuum off, which are also controlled by different timers. The vac on is controlled by timer timings. The vac off is controlled by done, when a timer is done. Right here is to reset the player 1 and player 2 so that it's able to get into the correct positioning. And right here we have our hitting for each player here. So whenever a hit is pressed, it will begin this timer off delay. Once that's equal, it will then begin the hit timer of 1 second, which can be found right here. And it is able to pass through this greater than block here. Once there is more than 5 cards being dealt, it will let you go down. And right here is for the stand push button and bus push button. Whenever those are pressed, it will go through this greater than or equal block into this one shot and count up 1 on the cards dealt, which will help keep track here of which player is currently up.